Hi, this is Juan de Angulo with Alien Partners, and we're rejoining you today for a continued fireside chat with my colleague James Lambert, who joined us from Amazon recently. And today we want to focus more on the principles of logistics and the flow of goods and some of the insight that James can share with us with his expertise. But maybe before we do that, James, you could just reintroduce yourself briefly, and then we can go into the subject matter.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Juan. So I joined Elion in April. Prior to that, I spent 5 years with Amazon developing their last mile distribution network. So hopefully I have something to contribute here.
So on that note, James, maybe one of the things we could start with today is you could talk about how does an Amazon package end up at somebody's doorstep? Like, what are all the different dynamics that go into play when this magical box shows up at somebody's door?
Sure. So if I can be Juan Dangulo, sitting in my home next to my wife, but she's not looking at my computer at 8 p.m., pretending like I'm watching a football game on a Sunday night, and I order my Mr. T big gold necklace from Amazon. And when I push the buy button, what happens? So at Amazon, it spins up, right? It goes up into the Amazon Web Services cloud system, and a whole bunch of things start happening. First, they go, where is this product? So this product is in Inland Empire of Los Angeles. It's also in Chicago. It's also in Lexington, Kentucky. Oh, look, there's also one here in Tampa Bay. So it figures out which one is closest to you. That's the one you're going to get, the one that's closest to you. Then it figures out who is the cheapest carrier. So it's going to go through a whole bunch of algorithms that tell it what the price is. Is it going to be USPS? You know, if it's a flat, very small item that looks like something you could send in an envelope, it's probably going to be US Postal Service. If it's not, if it's going to have to go in a box, it's going to go through UPS, not FedEx anymore because Amazon divorced FedEx 2 years ago. Or is it going to become a third party like OnTrack, or is it going to become Amazon's delivery system of its own? That's what they call Amazon Logistics. That's the business that I was brought in to help develop. And so then it goes through that, and it's going to figure out which is the cheapest one. From there, the product is going to go from the 1 million square foot plus fulfillment center to a sortation center. From that sortation center, it's going to send out a whole bunch of trucks that are going to go to a distribution center that are very close to you. And in your case, I think we called it DMI2. That's probably the one that's closest to you on. It's going to go there. And when that product gets there, it's going to be further broken down, just like a post office. And it's going to be put onto a route. And that route is going to be what one car picks up. And it's going to drive it to your neighborhood, and it's going to drop it off at your doorstep. And all of that, if it's coming from Tampa Bay, it's probably going to happen within 1 day, because the promise used to be 2 days. But Jeff Bezos came back 1.5 years ago and he said, we're going to do it in 1 day. You're probably going to get it tomorrow if you ordered it by a certain time today.
Interesting.
And if you ordered it early enough in the day, you might even get it the same day.
So let's talk a little bit about that. The Mr. T chain impulse buy probably is something that would take a day, maybe the same day, but probably a day to get to me. But I had an experience a few years ago where my son showed up at 8 o'clock at night and said, oh my gosh, I forgot that I had to take a harmonica to school tomorrow. And I obviously was not very interested in getting in my car and going around the city looking for a harmonica. So out of pure curiosity, I logged into Amazon Prime Now, and lo and behold, they had a harmonica available, and I had it within 2 hours at my doorstep. Yeah. How does Amazon know what inventory to maintain within driving distance of the demographics of
They know everything that you want to buy. They also know what everybody else has bought. The harmonica actually kind of surprises me a little bit. So what Amazon is going to do, so I described Amazon, the Amazon delivery service, but Amazon also has what they call sub same day. So within sub same day is Amazon Prime, which you just described, and Amazon Fresh. So Amazon Fresh being the food delivery side of the business. So with Amazon Prime, there's two components of that. One is they know what the most purchased SKUs are, the SKUs, within a geographic area. So they're going to try to put those really, really close to the customers so that they can get them there within one day. Strangely, with the most bought thing is bananas for some reason. So they know that people buy bananas more than anything. So that's what you're going to find out of Prime and Fresh most often. Harmonica kind of surprises me a little bit, but the reason that it might not surprise me is because if they have a large enough facility close to you for what they call sub same day, they might have enough, instead of being able to put 10,000 SKUs in there, they might be able to fit 20,000 SKUs. And maybe the harmonica fits in one of those SKUs. You know, definitely if you want things like printer ink, paper, you know, those things that you might need on a daily basis, they're absolutely going to have those things. So the harmonica actually surprises me, but I'm pretty impressed by it.
Yeah, I was thoroughly impressed. So let's talk about some of these. We talked about how the shipping gets to you, to a customer, how it flows through the system at Amazon. But how does that translate into real estate? As you're out there looking for good investment opportunities on behalf of Ely and Partners, what are the characteristics that you're looking for in these last mile facilities that can service this supply chain that you described?
Sure. So you can imagine I've seen a lot of the evolution because I was there at the beginning with Amazon Logistics, and as they developed the network and they changed the technology and they started to understand what they did more and more, they changed their requirements of real estate. What they really require right now is a hell of a lot of parking because you have two large employment bases. Everything is manual within a delivery station. There isn't automation like in the fulfillment centers. So everything is manual. Big trucks come in, the boxes are unloaded. It's called a fluid unload. They just go right out of the box onto a conveyor belt. And from there, you have people that have to make a decision about where the boxes go. And they usually have 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4. One up, one back, left and right. So they have to make a decision. And those boxes flow down different channels. And those boxes then get further divided down the channels into what they call routes. It's very, very manual. So it requires a lot of employees. Well, those employees need a place to park. You know, it's not all New York where there's a lot of 24-hour public transportation. Everywhere else in the United States almost doesn't have 24-hour public transportation. And this activity happens in the middle of the night. Just think about it like the post office. We all know the post office and how it works. Somehow our letters go to the post office and then they get put on a truck, and that truck leaves in the morning and delivers at some point in the day. Amazon, similar. They go into the delivery station, all of this sortation happens, and then the product gets put onto trucks and they get delivered. Well, all of those people need a way to get to work. They need a place to park, and then they need to be able to leave. But what else do you have? All of those delivery trucks. All of those delivery trucks have to have some place to park. And if they have to park off site, that reduces the time that they have on the road. So if you're talking an 8-hour shift, if it takes them 30 minutes to get to Amazon from wherever they parked, that reduces their shift by 1 hour. So now they have a 7-hour shift because 30 minutes each way. So the requirements for parking have greatly increased so that they can have all of the vehicles parked on site and all of the staff on site. Nobody expected that. Amazon delivery stations require parking ratio similar to retail. We're talking about a 5 to 1,000 square feet, 5 parking spots to 1,000 square feet ratio, which is unheard of in industrial.
So obviously, James, Amazon is not the only tenant out there. And as we are out looking for real estate, we're not only thinking about Amazon as much as we would love to have them as a tenant in every one of our buildings, but how much do these drivers translate into other tenants that are also looking for industrial real estate?
Yeah, so not a lot of other tenants need that much demand for parking. but there are a ton of other tenants that need similar, just less requirements. So we're talking Wayfair, we're talking the food distributors, we're talking regional distributors, whether it's Home Depot, whether it's Target, Walmart, all of them require very, very similar operations, just with lower parking requirements. Because a lot of those groups aren't doing the sortation within the building. The sortation is very much Amazon, UPS, FedEx type of sortation. The other groups, they don't do it that way because their volumes are significantly less. But they're still out there. They still have demands for the similar real estate. Everybody wants to be close to the rooftops because that reduces cost. That's the key. Close to the rooftops reduces that last mile cost.
So it sounds like we've got this e-commerce trend that has put all of this pressure on these last mile facilities. But then now, in addition, due to the pandemic, as we spoke about in our previous podcast, you've had this increase in demand with the flow of food. So how has that dynamic come in? I mean, are you seeing retrofitting of warehouses so that they can also work for food distribution? How are distributors of food like Amazon Fresh and others going about solving that need?
So it's a very interesting question, and I'm not entirely sure where it goes, except that I'm seeing increased rental rates on any building that has freezer or cooler. However, with that, there's also a requirement that the users of those spaces are very particular. So it's hard to fit that segment. But anybody that has a freezer or cooler should expect higher rental rates. From a new product perspective, it's very difficult to build spec for freezer cooler uses because it's very, very specific. So it's hard to know what they're going to want. And if it doesn't work, it's a big risk. The cost is very, very, very substantial compared to just your traditional build out. So from a spec perspective, I'm not seeing that. But I'm seeing Amazon Fresh. In addition, we're seeing those meal kit services like Blue Apron popping up and being very strong and demanding more and more real estate across all urban areas.
Understood. So to finish up today's podcast, James, let's talk a little bit about some of the other trends that we've heard a lot about. And I know they're not as readily prevalent, but definitely we've heard a lot about increased inventories, people that are distributing goods that were affected by the pandemic have a higher level of concern of being very lean or operating too much with just-in-time inventory, and they're increasing their inventories in their warehouse across the board, and then even a little bit of the onshoring of demand, which maybe is more of a first-mile phenomenon. But in those two areas, other than e-commerce, what are your thoughts? What have you seen? How much of it do you think is just talk in the industry versus reality? How do you think that could affect the supply chain?
When you talk about onshoring, I read something recently that said 85% of our PPE since COVID had to be brought in from offshore. And there's a lot of talk about that needs to be part of the strategic stockpile within the United States. I believe we're going to start seeing a lot more onshoring, and that's going to drive up the demand for that first mile. I haven't completely seen it yet, but it doesn't mean that it's not developing out there. There is a lot of talk related to it. I also think we're going to start seeing a lot more in the manufacturing sector come back onshore as we go back into an America first mode. And I'm cautious to use that because especially with the new administration coming in, I'm not really sure what it is, but there's definitely a movement afoot to bring more and more back into the United States.
Understood. Well, James, it's as always great to chat about what we're passionate about, which is industrial real estate. And thank you so much for sharing your wealth of expertise with the folks that are tuning in.
Thanks, Juan.